Brian, what would be your message to your team after this ball game?
Yeah, I thought we prepared well. I thought they did good effort. I thought the defense played hard. We gave up a pick six down there, but there's a lot of things to clean up. So again, I got to do a better job all the way around, and that's what I'll do.
It's our job to give them something to cheer about and to play well, to execute, and we take that seriously. So, they expect us to play well. We expect to play well. We've got to do that.
Could I hear the fans?
Yeah, I mean, they
however many fans there are.
Yeah, booing at home. Yeah.
Could I hear them?
Yeah.
Can you get another question, please?
I mean, no, you're going to lose games. It's how really you bounce back. First game of the season does really determine your season. So, we just got to keep on going as a team.
Yeah, I'd say just overall we have to do a better job, and that starts with me.
How concerned are you about his confidence level, if at all?
Yeah, I'd say, look, we got to do a better job all the way around. He'll learn from the tape, and we'll be better next week.
Well, there you go. There you had it. You just heard the head football coach, the starting quarterback, the biggest name on defense, and the rookie who we think is going to be rookie of the year. Talk to you guys uncandidly and give you guys the real about the performance in that 28-6 loss today to the Sam Darnold-led Minnesota Vikings. What's going on, guys? I'm Brandon London. I will be your host tonight. We also have our New York Post sports columnist, Mark Cannizzaro, joining us in a little bit. Getting set up in the press box. This is your Blue Rush post-game live show. Mark, let me know when you're ready and I'll bring you in, but I'm just talking to the people right now as real as possible. If you go back to last season's home opener against the Dallas Cowboys, that was a 40-0 loss. This year it's a 28-6 loss. That's 68-6 in back-to-back home openers. Players are upset. Your head coach is upset. And I was just hanging out with a lot of the fans after the game in the tailgate. The fan base is upset. Mark, what's going on, man? You watched the game from the press box. You had a different view than me, and you also got a chance to join the scrum and go into the locker room and the post-game conferences and hear what the players and head coach Brian Daboll said as well. Thoughts on the game, man? Let's kick this thing off.
Well, as I'm sitting here right now, Brandon, I'm writing about the quarterback. Daniel Jones did not play winning football today. And I think, to me, that's the one thing you take away from most with this game. I mean, the defense, gave an early difference-making play, when Drew Phillips forces the fumble, Bobby Okereke, picks it up. You're immediately in the red zone and you stall at the 5-yard line. So you take that, and there were two other red zone chances for the Giants when they were down later in the game that ended up one in an interception in the end zone and another on downs. You can't win football games like that. You just can't. I mean, and on the opposite side of the field, you had, to me, which was very damning, is you got Sam Darnold, who's playing on his 4th team in 5 years, looking like a Pro Bowler. I mean, he was doing anything he wanted, against that defense. And, at one point I just was throwing some stats together. At the time that the Vikings had gone up 21-3 with that first drive in the third quarter, Darnold was like 15 out of 17 for 180 something yards with 2 touchdowns. And DJ was 8 of 16 for about 50 yards, and a pick. So you just can't win football games like that. And so, I mean, I'm not saying this entire game was on Daniel, because quite frankly, the defense, which in this new regime, less aggressive than the Wink Martindale, defense, more of a bend but don't break defense. But this defense broke too. I mean, they gave up a 99-yard drive, which is inexcusable. Yeah. The Giants had that terrific, special teams play with 4 guys orchestrating, keeping that punt, on the 1-yard line. And, when Minnesota's sitting there with a first down on its own 1-yard line, I mean, that's a time when defenses, that's when you're salivating, right? Next thing you know, it's 99 yards and the game's done, basically. So, but my focus really for my column for tomorrow's Post is Daniel Jones. I think,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, listen, I don't want to be too overreactive, you know, and I'm kind of being a little tongue in cheek with that McCollum. You know, you don't overreact after one game, but you know what? If this performance carries over to next week against Washington, I mean, I think Brian Daboll has to really seriously consider looking at Drew Lock if he's healthy enough.
This early in the season, you think if that carries over to Washington, you would make that change that fast?
I would take a hard look at it. I mean, listen, again, it has to, you have to see what it looks like, Brandon, right? It
Yep,
didn't
yep.
look good today. I mean, Daniel Jones was throwing balls in the dirt on routine, passes over the middle. I mean, I know you were out there, you saw it, you were down in the field. He ballooned one way overthrew one, down. I'm actually sitting in the press box right now, just down on one of those red zone opportunities on third down. Threw it like 10 feet over, I think, Wan'Dale Robinson's head.
Yep.
You just can't play. You can't. It's not sustainable, And again, I'm not an overreaction person, but Daniel Jones is healthy. The third year of this Daboll system. Quite frankly, he looked like he was in the first game of his system today. I mean, there was just no energy. There was no rhythm, And again, was it just one bad game? The Giant fan hopes that it was. But if it looks like this again next week, I mean, if you're Daboll, how long do you wait? I know it sounds crazy, but and listen, there's a lot of dynamics there if you're a head coach. If you go away from Daniel Jones and Drew Lock doesn't work out, then what are you doing? I mean, Tommy Cutlets is not the answer. But I just think, I don't know. I mean, this was you were out there today. I mean, the Giants are celebrating their 100-year anniversary. They got the 100 top players out there. You got Bill Parcells and Tom Coughlin and Phil Simms and Eli out there and LT. And, it's always embarrassing for a franchise. I'm sure John Mara, I walked past him down in the bowels later, and I just kind of gave him a nod, to say hello. And I mean, he's got to be sick to his stomach. I mean, this was supposed to be a celebratory day, and it was anything but.
Well, Mark, you're a bold individual because I saw him through the tunnels and I didn't even look at him. Mr. Merrill, I'm talking about, didn't even make eye contact. Usually it's like hey, and we'll talk for a little bit. Ask me about my son time to time. I didn't even make eye contact with him because you can see he was upset. But let's go back to Daniel Jones because in the Blue Rush preview show, Paul brought up the fact that Daniel Jones could not be outdone by Sam Darnold. And when we look at the numbers, Sam Darnold, 19 for 24, 208 yards, 2 TDs, 1 INT. Daniel Jones, 22 for 42, 186, and 2 interceptions. Very pedestrian.
It's terrible.
Very pedestrian. And
You
what doesn't help it? You know what doesn't help it,
Can you
Mark?
still hear me, Brandon? I got just frozen here a little bit.
I can hear you. Thumbs up if you can hear me and you're back on, you're operating. Can you hear me, Mark? All right. Well, while Mark is getting the technical difficulties worked out, I'm gonna give my take on it because all throughout training camp, guys, we saw Daniel Jones and Malik Nabers, Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton. We saw deep ball after deep ball after deep ball after deep ball, and that gave me something. That gave me hope in the sense of the offense. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, let's blow it up right away or anything like that. But the player in me, the former NFL wide receiver in me, would be frustrated because when you go through something all throughout training camp and you're showing coaching staff, hey, we can hit the deep ball, we can throw it down the field, we can try and stretch this defense, stretch the field to make some sort of explosive plays within the offense, which they were lacking last year. You have to be you're let down. You're let down because you want opportunities. And I'm talking to Mario Manningham at halftime, Rio 82. And we talk about like, oh, who's the better 82 out of me and him? Obviously him. But he was just talking about how, okay, he didn't want Daniel to force the ball to Malik Nabers because he was saying he's getting a lot of cloud coverage. Cloud coverage means there's a hard corner on you and then there's a safety over the top. Justin Jefferson was pretty much getting the same thing except on that 4th and goal. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I wanted to see Daniel Jones take that step because the fans, y'all can give me whatever you want. I'm still kind of a Daniel Jones guy in that sense, and I think that he has the ability. But I did not think the play calling kind of helped him as well in that sense. bubble screens, a little short thing here, short thing there. That was the Giants' offense of last year. And Mark, you're back on, and I'm just talking about how, I put it on Daniel Jones as the leader, and as he just he said in his post-game conference that you saw, he stepped up and he talked about it. He took accountability. Short throw here, short throw there. What happened to the deep balls that we saw throughout training camp that got me excited, Amani Toomer excited, guys like Plaxico Burress excited, former Giants receivers were all excited to just to see Daniel Jones just let it fly. I don't even think we had an attempt, or the Giants had an attempt down the field past 15 to 20 yards. If you can't make those safeties back up, Motor Singletary, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Eric Gray, Saquon Barkley, no one can run in a loaded box. And I just think that, Mark, it was something to where it was like everyone was super excited. Like you said, 100th season, LT was out there, Eli, Phil Simms. I was on the microphone, even though people don't get excited about that. But there was just so much excitement about the day, and to see the offense only put up 6 points, especially getting a gift wrap ball inside your red zone at the beginning of the game. Very, very unfortunate. And I can see why fan base will be upset. I can see why players would be upset, and I can see why head coach Brian Dable would be upset on that as well, Mark.
Yeah, the deep ball thing is interesting you bring up, Brandon, because that was such an emphasis all summer. And even in the preseason game, and during the joint practices, Dayball was very, very much emphasizing Jones going down the field, and that was something we all expected. And there was, as you mentioned, there was not one ball thrown 20 yards down the field today. And quite frankly, I thought, and it was interesting too. And Dayball, for starters, from start to finish in his post-game press conference, said it was on him. He's obviously, he went over and over, there's a lot to fix. It's on me. We asked him specifically about the deep balls. He said there was stuff called. He also interestingly said, and I didn't turn this into a shot on Jones, but somebody asked him how the offensive line did or about the Vikings pressure. And Dave said the Vikings didn't bring him much pressure at all. Now, he did say that they were playing a lot of too deep, so they were trying to prevent the deep stuff, obviously, but every team does that.
Yeah.
But I thought the way he said it, almost matter-of-factly, like, well, they didn't bring that much pressure. So, in other words, my translation of that was Jones had plenty of time to throw for the most part. So it's not like he didn't have a chance to, step back there and sling it around a little bit. I just thought, listen, maybe I'm not an expert in terms of, like, he had 2 25-yard catches today. Nabers did. And he's the one dynamic offensive threat the Giants have. I mean, Singletary is not a dynamic back. He's a solid back. He's not as good in any way, shape, or form as Saquon is. So that's a downgrade right there. The other receivers on the Giants, Wandell is a small guy. He's a classic slot guy, just kind of get lost in the middle. Slayton's got some speed, but he's a little bit of a one-trick pony. You've got to feature Nabers. You have to feature Nabers. I don't care if you just throwing it up there and give him 50-50 balls. And they didn't do that at all today, and that really surprised me.
But Mark, it's not just Nabers. Like Slayton could be a one-trick pony, but people still come to the circus for that one pony. And Jalen Hyatt, as we try and figure out what his role is within this offense, he could be more than a one-trick pony. And we're sitting here watching this replay right here, and you're talking about coverage sacks. It's just unfortunate because they're rushing 1, 2, 3. They're rushing 4 right there against the Giants offensive line, who I thought held up.
I think
anybody can agree. Compared to last year's open season, sorry to cut you off, I think the Giants' offensive line held up this game. There was a lot of coverage sacks, but at the same time, I'm with you. If you got that one-on-one, and maybe that's a former wide receiver in me, and I saw Plaxico Burress, and I saw how sometimes he'd come to the sideline, and not so much blow up on Kevin Gilbride, former Giants offensive coordinator, but he wanted that rock. Malik Nabers is not in that position to do that and demand the ball right now. And we saw on Hard Knocks when they were asking him, how would you handle not getting the ball and all? And he handled it right for the first one. But I'm with you, man. You have to give the ball to him. And Mark, do you think those 5 sacks, do you think those are on the offensive line?
No, I would probably give, and this is just off the top of my head as I'm thinking. I don't think I would give. At most, 2 of them were on the offensive line, and maybe just one of them. I mean, I really felt
maybe
like
one or two. Yes, agreed.
Yeah, I thought there were a couple of times that Daniel just kind of looked around, didn't see anything. And to some degree, like one of them was a 2-yard sack, 2-yard loss. It was clear it was a covered sack. That's not a terrible sack to take. But I feel like Daniel should be seeing stuff a little bit better than it looked like he was, if that makes any sense, down the field, and I don't know that the Vikings were, presented that complicated of looks for him. But I just, I don't know, there just was no energy out there, Brandon, either, Daniel's not a rah-rah guy. He's not but I don't know. There's always been, in my opinion, a little bit something missing with Daniel that way. And he just doesn't bring the energy. And if you're not going to bring the energy, you damn well better throw some good footballs down the field and make some plays, right? So, the deep ball thing was a mystery to me because I think there were opportunities today, and especially coming off of how much Dayball and Daniel versus Darnold, so to speak, before the game. I mean, this was damning to me. This is an indictment for Sam Darnold to come in here and play the way he did, and Daniel to play the way he did was, that's not a good look, that's being polite.
All right, let's flip it, Riverside it. We can talk about the defense now. And one thing that, again, we talked on the Blue Rush preview side, the Blue Rush preview show. Me the most, Mark, was the 4th and goal. Justin Jefferson touchdown. He's one-on-one with Tay Banks. Love Tay Banks. Love the attitude. Love the energy. Love how he wants to be a CB1, a lockdown corner. And he says, this is why they drafted me. I am not leaving any defensive call
for the Vikings.
Everybody in the place knew they were going to go to Jefferson.
Yep.
So, I don't get it. There was some decent pressure early. I thought thought that the Giants got decent pressure early in that game, but it got lessened as the game went on. I didn't see as much pressure later. Obviously, Dex got a hand on a Darnold pass that was picked off, but by then that game was pretty much over anyway. But yeah, it was. Listen, I think the Giants secondary was exposed today. There's no question about it. Thought maybe he'd come up with a big play. Thibodeau initially. That face mask was called on Burns. I believe it was changed to Thibodeau. That was a crusher. That was 3rd and 16, and I believe they gained 7 on the pass play. So that's going to be 4th down, and they're punting. A really, really bad play there. So on Thibodeau's part. So that has to be their strength. Listen, you got to play to your strengths, and we know the Giants are thin and inexperienced and not particularly skilled on the back end, and that was exposed today without question.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Kevin, how Kevin O'Connell calls the plays for his offense. And if you're looking at the strength of a defense, the team you're going up against is going to be their defensive line. And I love to throw the rock. I love to slang the ball. I'm going to block it up. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep a back end. I'll keep a tight end. I'll have a back chip. Because I know I have Justin Jefferson out there, because I know I have Jordan Addison out there, and even the tight end made a couple plays for them today. So it's one of those things where this could be the blueprint on how to neutralize what Kayvon Thibodeau called possible 3 Hall of Famer defensive line. Yeah, they're going to keep guys in. They're going to keep guys in to block, to double Dex, to double Brian Burns, or the chip. You're going to make sure that whoever that quarterback is, and it was Sam Darnold, Kevin O'Connell called a game for him to feel comfortable, to be protected, to have a clean pocket, and to sling the rock, throw the ball to your weapons.
You know what he also, Brandon, if I can just jump in for a second, he moved Sam around a little bit too, which is, I mean, listen, that's not anything revolutionary when you're trying to get away from a pass rush. But Sam has always been a very good thrower of the football on the run. That's always been his strength. And quite frankly, I thought in his 3 years with the Jets, they didn't utilize that nearly enough. And I think that O'Connell really did a good job with that today. He was doing a lot of rolling, moved him around, and that was a big deal. I'm just looking here as we're talking to Burns. I'm just looking at so Burns had 4 tackles, no sacks, nothing for losses. It was a very pedestrian game on his part. I was really surprised at his numbers, his lack of difference making, if you will, today. And Thibodeau is not even credited with a tackle. I mean, that's pretty bad. Now, in fairness, the Vikings didn't have a lot of offensive plays because they didn't need that many of them. But even so, I mean, so Thibodeau had one hurry, and that was it. So the Giants can't operate this way and win. I mean, the Vikings are a decent team, but they're not any kind of a dominant team. I mean, let's get back to Sam Darnold. This was his first game in this system. This is his first game as a Viking, and he looked like he's been there for 10 years. That's pretty damning.
Yeah. Both on the offense and defensive side of the ball, it's one of those look from within games. And again, I know I'm media now, and I know I got to say things for some clickbaits to, get the ad revenue and all. Mark, we got a job to do. We got to keep our light bill paid. I got a 16-month-old who he just eating me out of house and hold. So I got to speak from the media side of things. But the player side of me, I'm thinking can the Giants ultimately get right? I'm thinking if I was in that locker room with the Antonio Pierces, with the Justin Tucks, Osi Umenyioras, who I saw 2 out of 3 of those guys today. And I just remember when we started 0-2, that 07 year. And then AP came into, it was a locker room or it was a meeting. Strahan, Richie Soybert, all those guys shut down that losing mentality and was like, we got to get right. Can they do that? Can this Giants team do that? Because you had every single draft pick play today. It's such a young team. I believe it's the 3rd youngest team in the NFL. So the vets, the Brian Burns, the Kayvon Thibodeaux, they have to play above and beyond the Call of Duty and register sacks. Because if I'm a young guy like Drew Phillips and I made one of the biggest plays on defense, if I'm a young linebacker, Musa, and I made an interception, there's 2 rookies that took over the defense today. No, we're the leaders of the defense. You listen to us. And I'm not saying, not to start controversy or anything, but rookies can puff their chest out sometimes when they're the ones making plays, and the vets are, like you said, are a little bit pedestrian in that sense. So it's one of those games where it's like, we just got punched in the mouth, the eye, and the clavicle, whatever the neck bone's connected to the whatever bone. Yeah. They got punched in. It's one of those games.
They got punched lower than that, Brandon, by the way.
Yeah, but we can't see it on the live stream because this is PG-13. But it's one of those games, Mark, player-wise, it's I'm getting back into that facility early tomorrow morning. I'm going to watch the tape before we get together and watch it as a team. I'm going to look in the mirror. I'm going to have my accountability moments. I should have broke my route off at 14 instead of 16. Should have came back to the ball, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, this team hasn't won enough to just shake off a loss like this, Mark.
So, Brandon, you just mentioned AP, Antonio Pierce and some of those guys that you were around. The Giants don't have those guys in that locker room. The closest they have who would come in on a Monday and try to, just try to right the wrongs, settle the ship, however you want to, whatever cliche you want to use. You're looking at Dexter Lawrence. That's probably your number 1 guy. Bobby Okereke, who's a very, settling, good veteran influence in there. That's about it in there. Offensively, and again, it's going to go back to Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones he doesn't spell leader to me. You know what I'm saying? I hate to say it, but there's not a lot that I see in Daniel Jones that that has me thinking guys, want to follow this guy. He's not, you know what I mean? It's just, it doesn't command, he just doesn't command that much. And again, we're not around these guys inside, inside closed doors, but, Daniel is who he is. He's not a real, very outspoken guy. He, by all accounts, he's a massively hard worker. I mean, he came back from some significant injuries, but offensively, I don't know if there's a guy in that room. Slayton is one of the, is one of the elder statesmen in there, and top classy guy, but he's a bit player to some degree. He's a third receiver basically. I mean, that's not the guy you're going to be having a guy standing on a table for. And again, you mentioned Drew Phillips had probably the best game of any Giant today. But he's been here for 10 minutes. He's not a leader yet. Banks isn't a leader yet. I mean, you're kind of looking at, a team is very young and doesn't have a lot of guys in that room other than like Dex and Bobby. There's really nobody in the secondary. McKinney's gone. He was kind of, potentially a guy like that, but he's no longer. And Saquon was probably that guy, on offense, but he's gone. So they're in a tough spot here. They don't really have a lot of veteran leadership in that room to come in on Monday, tomorrow, and say, hey guys, let's, I mean, listen, I think this is a pretty accountable team. Dayball is a very accountable guy. I mean, he said like 20 times in this press conference, it's on me. It starts with me. I got to figure that, we got a lot to clean up, and it starts with me. I get it. But this has to be for the Giants, Brandon. I mean, listen, everybody feels good coming out of camp. I mean, every team thinks it's going to go 17-0. But the Giants came in here with an improved offensive line, with Nabers and some more, offensive firepower in theory. They came in with some questions at the secondary and whatnot. But to come out and play a game like this today has got to be it's disgusting. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's disappointing. It's disgusting. It's got to be. These guys are very disillusioned right now, I have to think, because this was borderline non-competitive today.
Before we wrap this up, I want to use this comment that's in the comment section right now, because we're talking about Brian Daboll taking over the play calling. Does he feel any pressure when it comes to that? And Drew McDonald said all around bad, top to bottom. DJ was horrible, but he's not the only problem. Daboll had months to prepare for this game. Instead, they got outclassed in back-to-back home openers. Roster aside, to be embarrassed at home like this is pathetic. Daboll just took the accountability like a grown man should when it comes to that. A lot of people, like myself, was beyond excited that he was going to be taking over the play calling, because we saw what he did with Josh Allen in 2020 and 2021. His last 2 years with him had a Stephon Diggs. He's got a Malik Nabers. I know it's only game one, and I'm not trying to throw the pressure card or anything, but how much pressure is it on him to get it right next Sunday down in Washington against the Commanders?
Well, listen, I mean, first of all, the Maras are not going to fire a coach in season unless there's just really, really significant cause to do so. So I don't think there's pressure.
I don't mean fire. I'm not there yet when it comes. I'm just like pressure to right the ship.
There's a lot of pressure. I mean, this did not look good today. And again, as we mentioned earlier in the show here, I mean, this also took place on the 100th anniversary celebration at halftime with the 100, most influential and best players in the franchise history lining up in the field at halftime. And this is the product they delivered to the fans. I mean, we go back to, you and I seeing, John Mara downstairs later. This is not sitting well right now with John and the Tisch family and everybody that's involved, above Brian. And Brian knows that. I mean, and I think that's a part of why he was he's always an accountable guy.
Yep.
But, I think that's a big part of his accountability. But, it's funny you mentioned, I expected, I think that Brian had a really bad day of play calling today. He was outcoached, obviously, by O'Connell. And that surprised me, because I do think he's a dynamic play caller. And I think we had an expectation, going back to some of the things we talked about him going down the field a little bit more and stretching the field. And I just think this was a bad day all around for him, for the quarterback. But, everybody wants, ever since Dave's got here, everybody has wanted to compare. Maybe not compare is not the right word, but they want Daniel to be Josh Allen, and he's not Josh Allen. Okay, first of all, he's a terrific athlete, but he is not nearly as dynamic a player as Josh is. And he doesn't have Josh Allen has. You look at Josh Allen, and you look at the way he takes control of the field. Josh Allen is a leader. He breathes. He sweats leadership. Daniel, I'm in constant search of leadership when I look at Daniel. He just doesn't bring the juice, and so in that way, those two guys are completely different. And so it's unfair to think that Dave's is going to turn DJ into Josh Allen. It's just not realistic, is what it is. But DJ should be a hell of a lot more than he was today, and I don't think Brian helped him with his play calling today. I think that Dave's, needs to get back to what they were working on all summer, which is getting the ball down the field. And when you're scouting this team, Brandon, on offense, there's only one player that really scares you if you're a defensive coordinator, and that's that's Nabers. So he needs to have more than, what did he have? He had 7 targets today, which isn't terrible.
Not terrible at all.
But that needs to be double digits, easy, and it needs to be down the field.
Because that opens it up for the Slaytons, the Jalen Hyatts, the Theo Jeffersons, and the run game, which was very much pedestrian, to use the word of the day, when it came to this game. We're going to wrap this thing up. Thank you to the fans who joined us to watch this. I know we wanted a better result, both media, fan-wise, player-wise, MC-wise, but it just is what it is. On to Washington. They go down to Washington to play the Commanders. Next Sunday, we'll be having a Giants viewing party at Tommy's Tavern in Clifton. But thank you guys for watching Blue Rush Live post-game show. We're going to be doing this all season. So win, lose, draw, come out, hang out with us. We love the comments. For Mark Cannizzaro, I'm Brandon London. Thanks for watching.